Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us at the ever-improving No Soundbites Allowed podcast. My name is Michael Vasquez. We thank you for joining us in this adventure of describing the politics that go on in our nation on a personal and local level as often as possible, giving you, the audience, more than just 30 seconds to understand what's going on in our nation. We look forward to joining you as we go. Just sit back, enjoy the ride. Please remember, if you like the episodes, like it, share it, let other people know, and if you can, please donate, even if it's $2, even if it's $5, because it all makes a difference. We thank you, and here we go. Hello, and thank you, everybody, for joining us at No Soundbites Allowed. This is your host, Michael Vaus, the Dragon of the Southern Tier, and I'm happy to be with everybody. We thank you for being here. You make the difference. Now, the reason why we're here today is, there's a couple things that I just want to get off my chest. It's been really bugging me this week. And in particular is a conversation that I had. Now, let me backtrack a little bit on this. As many people may be aware, or maybe you aren't, I work on several boards throughout the community in the Binghamton, Broome County region. Some of them are nonprofits, some of them are just community-based. And I recently was in one of those meetings, and just this past week, which is the week of ending March 31st as I tape this, and I had a conversation. There were several individuals at a recent board meeting. I won't mention by my name. One is a member of the Binghamton University administration. There were a couple of police officers from the Binghamton City Police Department that were present, and we were having a conversation about an aspect of the community trying to bring greater safety to the community, both students and residents, and there were several people representing all of those parties there. Now, the reason why I bring up the university professor and dean and one of the members of the Binghamton Police Force is because the conversation, and I had just come from work. I got to the meeting a little bit late, and I walked into the meeting, and the conversation started off with, or I walked into one of the Binghamton representative of the administration stating, I'm afraid of the police force. Well, there's something, very strongly saying, as a member, as a person of color, I'm afraid of the police. And I found that quite interesting and threw me off, and I had to stop them and say, okay, hang on. I just walked into this. What are we talking about here? What is this conversation going on? And as it turned out, the conversation was about bringing in perhaps different aspects, whether it be greater police presence, walking around doing patrols, or there's an issue called blue lights in the city where they would have call boxes that would be able to help identify if there's some activity going on that potentially is endangering someone or a crime, which was initially supported by Democrats. In fact, Broome County Executive Jason Garnar was one of those proponents of this idea, and the University of Binghamton actually was a proponent of this idea of getting blue lights or call boxes for police into the city to help increase, if not the safety, the perception of safety of many students and residents. Before Citizen Action and a couple of other far-left groups within the city shot that down as it's somehow racist. And I'll get into that in a moment about whether or not a piece of metal can be racist. That's a whole other thing. But what I noticed is when I walked in and I heard this conversation, I was told, okay, this is what we were talking about at that moment. And I was struck by a unique feeling, a unique experience. And I'm going to try and convey that to you here in just a moment. Now, why would I play the Imperial March, because that's what it was like. I walked in and we're talking about the police, and oh my God, the Empire has arrived. The police are going to have patrols, and they're going to have a presence that people will notice more than they do now, because police are evil somehow. And I was just astounded by this. And I was astounded by the individual person of color mentioning that they were afraid of the police. And it coincides with, various actions of, say, Black Lives Matters and several of the far left, Citizen Action and other organizations across the country, pushing this idea, police are absolutely evil. They're horrible. They are authoritative and putting their finger on the people, especially people of color, and we should fear them. We should be terrified of them. How dare they do this? That was the impression that I was being given, and that was what was being explained to me by the member of the Binghamton University administration to the police officers and to me. And then came the critical and really important part of it, is when they said to me, Michael, don't you agree? Don't you agree with me as a man of color? Don't you agree that, this is troubling, that you know what I'm talking about? And I have to tell you, my answer was, no, I don't. This is bull. This is not real. And it isn't real. And let's really address this, because no one does. And I have to tell you, I'm on the side of police on this, because I've had that experience. Now, that's not to say that police officers across the nation and in any community are angels. They're not saints, nor are they supposed to be. And I don't expect them to be based on what they do every day. But at the same time, while we have very few but definite examples of police abuse and misuse of power and authority throughout the nation, which gets highly publicized, that's not the case every day. On general, and as a rule, the police are well organized, well disciplined, and they help people. That's their job. And there are exceptions to that. And I dare you to point to any organization that doesn't have that case. I mean, just look at Citizen Action in the Broome County region. One of their members, Mr. Bobby Black, was recently under a warrant of arrest because of his actions. But I don't say that all of Citizen Action and all of Black Lives Matter are indicative of him because of his actions that caused him to have a warrant for his arrest, which is public. That's public knowledge. It was already out that the police are looking for him and had a warrant for his arrest. So I'm not giving away something here, but he was a very prominent, well-known member of the organization. And that doesn't mean that the organization is somehow now violent and supposed to be, under arrest. At least not for his reasons. And I've documented and spoken about why I think those groups are dangerous in and of themselves. But that's not because of him. That's because of the organization and what they have promoted and what they have demonstrated very clearly in their actions. But should we vilify the entire organization and the entire far left because of the actions of that one individual, Mr. Bobby Black, that was publicized by and well-known and public information? Should we? No. Now, the professor was telling me, well, you're a black man. You should understand that police are dangerous. And I have to tell you, no. Let's think about that. From my experience. Now, I have a Binghamton University administrator who's telling me, well, I'm afraid of walking down the street. Let's think about that. That individual doesn't live in the city of Binghamton. That individual doesn't come down to the city of Binghamton on weekends or nights. That individual is not involved in the city. This is a fact. And I'm listening to this individual say they're afraid in their very nice home, in a very nice part of where he lives, and lives very well, and has no contact with, well, let's call it the seedier aspects of life in the world right now. And I'm not discounting any past experiences that an individual may have, though as far as has been explained to me, the individual has never had a negative police interaction, ever. Never been arrested, never had a negative police interaction. So I'm wondering, where are you getting that? But let me give you my experience in just the city of Binghamton, because I can tell you for a fact, when I had a addict who was high on PCP break into my home on a Saturday morning at 4 a.m. and endangered me and the individuals in my household at the time, which is public information, I had 8 police cars came to my house to arrest that individual and protect us. And yes, I won't get into whether his firearm was here and what actions I was going to do and willing to do to protect the home. That's a Second Amendment issue, and I'll leave it at that. But we're talking about the police, and their reaction was within 3 minutes, 8 police cars were here with approximately 12 officers that were out looking to take this individual down because they broke into my home. And I happen to, and just let me give you a little more context, I live in the center of the worst part of Binghamton, the city of Binghamton. My area is defined as the worst section of the city, and I own a home here, and I have been here for over a decade. And I'm listening to an individual who lives in a very nice area with no problems and an incredibly low crime rate tell me that I should be afraid of police officers in my section. Now, and let me give you some more context on that. Where I live, there have been 7 shootings, a couple of them fatal. None of them have involved the police. These were individuals on each other. Half of them were black on black crimes. All of them were related to drugs. Who am I afraid of? The police officers who are constantly in my neighborhood and have not assaulted anyone, or the individuals in my neighborhood who have initiated acts of violence against each other and others around them? Which one's more dangerous? Which one would you be afraid of? I have never, in every single interaction I have watched the Binghamton police officers involved with in my neighborhood and surrounding areas, I have yet to see them overstep their bounds. Not saying that they never have. I've never seen it. And I can tell you that since we instituted the body cameras on police officers in the city of Binghamton, there has never been a complaint against the police for abuse of power that has actually been verified. There has not been, not one. That's a fact. That's not even a question. It's a fact. So we have a fallacy that's going on here. Police are dangerous. Police are bad. Except there's no proof of that. Police are dangerous to people of color. Except there's no proof of that. And it completely obliterates and obfuscates the real fact that black on black or minority on minority crime is incredibly high and fueled by a drug culture that negatively impacts everyone in the community. But that's not something to be afraid of. If you want to be afraid of something walking down the street at Binghamton, especially in the higher crime areas like where I live, then you have to worry about whether or not a drug addict is going to come after you, not the police officer. That's a reality. But you know what? I'm going to take a quick break here, and I'm going to come back because I want to talk a little bit more about this, because there is a serious disconnect between reality and the impression, and I want to talk about that a little bit more. But we'll be right back. Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming back to No Soundbites Allowed with your host, Michael Voss, the Dragon of the Southern Tier. And as always, I am happy to have you here joining us in our conversation because you make all the difference. Now, as you are listening, in the first segment, I was detailing a very troubling conversation I was having at one of my board meetings with a member of the Binghamton University administration, a couple of police officers, and they're telling me, the Binghamton University administrator telling me about how I should be afraid of police officers because of reasons. That's it. Just reasons. Police officers are bad. They instill fear into people of color because they exist. That is racist. It's stupid and it's racist. It just is. And I had in the meeting at that point blew up quite a bit because we were having some serious discussion about this because I don't agree. I do not agree at all with that commentary. I think it was insane. Okay, so yes, I'm throwing in a couple of Star Wars because let's just look at it from the realities that exist here. Okay, the fact is, and I want some truth here. Okay, I want some truth in this. The truth is that in my experience, and those of almost every single person I've talked to in the city of Binghamton, and I've talked to people throughout all of Broome County and 8 counties all total, the experience that the average person will have is that the police are not a factor in their life. That is a reality. That's a fact. Most people don't interact with the police at all. Of the interactions that people tend to have with the police, it is usually because someone has done a crime against them and they are looking for the police to help them. And they get that help. And then there is this minuscule number of incidents where we see police have had incidents of abuse. Matter of fact, I was looking for it. And if you search under Binghamton police abuse, if you look under Binghamton police misconduct, if you look under Binghamton police abuse of power, you'll find that there are some incidents. Matter of fact, one in 2009 and one in 2012. That's it. Oops, I'm sorry. And one in 2015. 3 incidents that are recorded publicly, which goes along with the police officers who mentioned to me that since they had their body cams, not one incident of abuse of power by police officers has ever been verified. No one has forwarded their complaint because there is actual video evidence of the fact that police officers aren't doing anything. There you go. There's the proof. But somehow we have this Binghamton University administrator who's trying to push forward this idea that somehow, if you're a person of color, you should be afraid of police, which goes with the Black Lives Matter viewpoint that's being pushed out there in the media viewpoint that's well publicized that police are bad somehow, that they're doing something wrong. Really? Where is this? Because honestly, we're talking 12 to 24 times in a year, there is a well publicized incident, and actually even less than that, that gets put across all the news media. And it's very biased. And it's only one-sided. And it usually comes out when there's no evidence. You look at, what was it in, was it Missouri? With the kid, Brown, who had just robbed a store. Police were looking for the individual. The kid was proven to have rushed the police officer and the firearm goes off. And all of the claims that the kid was shot in the back proven wrong, both by witnesses and forensics, but no one wants to talk about that. The police were the bad guys. Why? And I'm not telling you that police are saints. I have written many, many articles talking about where there is defined police abuse. We're talking about Oscar Grant, Amadou Diallo, Adolph Grimes. I've written many articles about this. I've spent hours and hours following these kinds of issues. I'm not saying all police are innocent. I'm not saying that police abuse doesn't exist or that minorities have not had the impact of this. And I'm not saying that police tend to be more aggressive against minorities. I'm saying that it's not unjustified. And in many of these cases, we have full justification when we look at the full facts that these individuals, in many of these cases that are well publicized from one very specific viewpoint, is there just to instill fear. It is fear-mongering. Because in many of these cases, we have come to find that the individual that we're being told is a saint is actually a criminal, and that they're a sinner, that they're the worst of the worst in many of these cases, that they are active criminals who have endangered others as well as the police officer involved when that shooting happens. We see this many times. Like I said, there's the case with Brown. There are several others as well. So why do we have this impression? Why is this promoted? Well, because it serves an agenda, quite honestly, as far as I can tell. I know that when I compare Black Lives Matters, where I was in their meeting in Binghamton, and I listened to them talk about destroying property because of someone's color. That's it. They said it's okay to destroy rental properties that you live in because the owner is white and you happen to be a person of color. That is wrong. Morally wrong, ethically wrong, and legally wrong. But that's what Black Lives Matters is promoting. They're pushing this image that the police, and they've had several demonstrations in the city of Binghamton, all of them illegal, never once got a permit, no one stopped them. Officers on scene, no one ever stopped them. No one has ever interrupted them. No one has bothered. There is no news camera, so it's not because, they might be captured on film. No, they were just doing it, and police officers let them do it. I have not seen that. I have heard of several instances where police officers in the city of Binghamton were involved with an altercation. And in each and every one of those cases, and many times I've had the actual individual who was involved in the incident tell me directly and personally that they were in the wrong, that they were the aggressors and the police reacted to them. Now, you can tell me, well, Mike, there's a limit on how much the police should be able to respond to that aggression. Okay, that's a debatable issue. That is debatable. But why should I be afraid of the police? If I'm not being an aggressor, the proof is, across the entire nation, the reality is that 95% of the time, if you're not an aggressor and you're not trying to do something wrong, you have nothing to fear. Nothing at all. And let's look at it from another point of view. Let's say that you're involved, there's an incident going on. What are you going to do? Are you going to call the local drug dealer? Are you going to call a crackhead? Or are you going to call the police? You're going to call the police because you want to have an efficient, reasonable, and disciplined response in your favor. Someone who's going to help protect you. That's a police officer. How can we be angry with police officers for doing the job, a thankless job at that, of dealing with the very worst aspects of our society and individuals, and at the same time attack them? How can we say when black on black crime is just exponentially higher than any other form of crime going on, where black on black deaths outnumber anything and everything else in terms of the crime statistics and the homicide rates, and almost all of that is fueled by drugs and criminality, and we're going to say, well, police are bad because they actually deal with that aspect, that they deal with crimes and criminals of the worst sort. Look, I'm black and I'm Hispanic, and I've lived in the Bronx through the crack epidemic in a region that there are no saints, okay? I'm not telling you that I'm an innocent person, that I've never seen anyone ever use drugs, or I don't know anyone like that. I'm not telling you that I grew up in some garden spot in the world. I didn't. I've lived in many places. When I was homeless, I had to live for part of my time on the street, living at a crack house. I'm not proud of it, but at the same time, I needed a place to stay. I've seen a lot. I've been involved. I've had 12 times in my life where a police officer has pulled a gun on me without cause. So I understand that aspect. I also understand that I've seen police officers come to protect me and my home more than once. I've seen them come to protect my home, my residence. And I've seen the individuals, drug dealers, drug addicts, criminals of all types, who cause the aggression that a police officer is required for. And I'm not afraid to say that. Let's get this real. This isn't about police officers against minorities. Can there be improvements? Absolutely. Are they in a horrible job? Absolutely. Are there officers who are not the best of the best? Absolutely. Name an large organization where that is not the case. I was a United States Marine. Okay. I'm not going to tell you that every Marine walked on water. They don't. We have Marines who are not good Marines. We have members of the Army, the Air Force, the Navy that aren't the best of the best. At the same time, the entire organization is excellent. That doesn't mean just because there was one Marine who was a slacker doesn't mean that the entire Marine Corps is slackers. You can't say that. It's not real. It's not true. It's not justified. So why do we have this impression? Why do we have a Binghamton University professor fighting against the police because the police are trying to ensure the safety of Binghamton University students and the community? Why is he giving that pushback? Because that Binghamton University professor knows, and I said to him directly, you know what? We have a culture problem, not a police problem. We have a culture that says, especially to those who are poor and minorities, you should be a criminal, not anything else. We don't see music videos and we don't see media that says, hey, you are a person of color, you're black, you're Hispanic, you're Asian, whatever, that says, hey, you should go out there and be a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, a carpenter, a plumber, that you should have your own business. We don't hear that. We don't see that in media. What we do see is you should be a rapper. In particular, you should be a rapper that has been arrested for selling drugs or other crimes, that you should be a criminal. That's what you should be. And if your way out of the ghetto is either you can be a rapper who's a criminal, a drug dealer, or you can live in the ghetto. That's it. Those are your things. You can be an entertainer or in sports. You know, you want to be a baseball star, basketball star, football star. Fantastic. You want to be that, or you're going to be a criminal. And that's the only way you get out. That's the only way you improve your life. That is so limited and stupid. That's what we're telling our kids. That's what we're telling the minorities. That's what we're telling kids who are poor. You can be an entertainer or you can be a criminal. And that's it. Those are your options for life. Where's our conversation saying you can be educated? What about, you want to be a rapper? Fantastic. You want to be a football player? Fantastic. Where's the message that says, hey, by the way, you should have a degree. You should have education on top of that, if nothing else, as a backup plan. Because what happens if your voice is damaged? What happens if you break your leg? You can't be that entertainer. You're just not good enough. You're not, or you can't be that football star. You're just not that good enough as an athlete. What about your backup plan? Hey, let's emphasize something else. What about, Michael Jordan has a degree, is a business owner. Matter of fact, almost everybody in basketball, football, baseball, any kind of sport, they have degrees. They have businesses. They're successful. Tiger Woods, businessman. He's a businessman as well as an athlete and one of the best at it. Let's think about that, folks. They're not just entertainers. These are intelligent, educated individuals who are supplementing, if not replacing in some cases, their athletics with their education that allows them to grow their wealth and become better. Why aren't we talking about that aspect of them? No, we just talk about, well, they're athletes. Ooh, that's their wealth. No, actually, it's because of their business acumen and the business deals they make and the businesses that they own. That's what makes them rich. Not the athletics by itself. That's temporary. But we don't talk about that. We don't talk about, well, you should be in the minority communities. We're not talking about you should be educated. In fact, we have so much of an anger against someone who is educated. If you speak differently than pure slang, if you actually are trying to become a doctor, a scientist, anything that's educated, you have others all around you in the community saying, well, you're a sellout, that you've done something wrong, that you're not behaving well. Really? Is that the message that we're giving each other in the minority community? You shouldn't be like that. You should be afraid of the police. You shouldn't get an education. You should either be an entertainer or you should be a criminal. That's it. That's your choices. This is what we are saying as a society. And more importantly, within the minority community, that is the message we are sending to our kids. You can be a criminal or you can be an entertainer. And if you get an education, something is wrong with you. You've done the wrong thing. You don't have to believe me. Look at the media. Look what's out there on Facebook. Look at what's in the music videos. Look at how the media portrays entertainers. Look at how it portrays athletes. Look at how it portrays any intelligent person of color. And the only exception of that is when that person of color is trying to take a leadership role and says, oh, well, I'm going to be your leader. Whether the media says that or whether they do it because they're an elected official, I'm going to help you because I'm going to lead you. And you know what? We've had an exponential growth in the number of individuals who are Black, Hispanic, women in politics. And with that explosion, literally exponential explosion since the 1970s, we have more people who are Black and Hispanic and women who are involved in politics. We're talking about mayors, governors, we're talking about senators, we're talking about Congress members, and we have seen no corresponding improvement in the quality of life for their respective groups. In fact, we've seen a either being stagnant or down. So tell me, what's really happening here? Who's really at fault? Why are we upset with police officers? Because 3,000 miles away from Binghamton, there was an incident with one officer out of a police force of 30,000, one incident that is questionable, and we don't have all the facts yet. But the Binghamton police are supposed to be upset with that? Please, I have searched for it. Show me an incident where the Binghamton police shot anyone 20 times. Please, show me that, because it doesn't exist. Show me where we saw a Rodney King moment in Binghamton against anyone, because it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. We are blaming our local police, and this is not just Binghamton, it's all over the nation in lots of areas where we're watching police officers being downtrodden and portrayed as villains because one individual, thousands of miles away almost always, made a bad decision and was a bad guy and surrounded by a sea of, well, if not good guys, they may not be angels, but they're not devils either. Does this make sense to anyone? Well, maybe it will in a second, because I'm going to take another point of view here, but we'll be right back. I'm just going to take a quick break and then we'll go forward. and thank you for coming back to No Soundbites Allowed with your host, Michael Voss, the Dragon of the Southern Tier. And we're talking about a very touchy subject here. We're talking about police and the impression of police in the city of Binghamton and Broome County, and of course throughout the entire nation. And I'm talking specifically about an interaction I had with a Binghamton University professor, a couple of officers from the Binghamton Police Force, and myself. And by the way, this is a public event. I'm not giving away anything. The event was open to the public, so anyone could have come and heard this. So I don't have a problem mentioning what happened there. But I do want to talk about this because, the thing that really gets me upset about this is the fact that I was asked by the professor, don't you agree with me? Aren't you afraid of police? And when I said no and started giving some of the reasons, as I have been just now, looking at me dumbfounded, like, well, I guess that's you. You're special. How am I special? How am I special? And I hear this every so often. People go, well, you're special, Mike, because, you're involved in politics. What's that got to do with anything? When someone broke into my home, it wasn't because I was special. It was a drug-crazed addict who was breaking into my home because he was breaking into my home to do harm. Didn't know what my political beliefs were. He just knew that he was breaking into a house. I wasn't a target. He didn't know anything about politics. He could care less. He was high on PCP. When I see the people in the neighborhood, when they're killing each other or attempting to kill each other 50 yards from my house, they weren't doing so because they thought, well, hey, Mike's a Republican, so we can do this. No, they could care less. They don't know. They didn't care. When they're having their fights with knives and guns in my neighborhood, which happens more frequently than I would like to mention, they're not doing it because, they're battling between Republicans or battling between Democrats or Republican against a Democrat. They're doing it because they're drug dealers, most often, or addicts, which is also often, and they have a dispute, and they're worried and upset about their criminality, and they're having a fight over that. And occasionally just because they're dumb. And they have a dumb fight over, you are sleeping with my boyfriend, whatever. I've seen that too. These are the stupid reactions. It has nothing to do with politics. It has to do with nothing else. I'm not elected to any office. I'm not special. I speak out about the issues I believe in. I talk to people. I make it known. I stand out. If that makes me so special that I get no perks, I get no money for this, no one pays me for any of the work that I do, other than occasionally getting a couple of dollars for a donation, which, by the way, please donate. I could use a few more dollars. This stuff is expensive. But I don't get anything for that. I don't have any perks. I'm not different. I'm just active because I believe it's important. And I'm not saying that anyone, Citizen Action, Black Lives Matters, those guys, they do it because, I think they do it because they believe in what they say, even though it's racist in my experience, and wrong. And, factually, they mix up facts and change facts. But that's besides the point. When I look at this, I'm looking at this individual as he's telling me I must agree with him because he's a person of color and I'm a person of color. So we must agree. Why? When my life experience, which it has an entirely different viewpoint, this is an individual who has never experienced being homeless. This is an individual who's never experienced living in the center of a crime zone. This is an individual whose home and life have nothing to do with the reality of low income, poor minorities and other individuals, even in the area he lives in. And he's telling me how I should feel based on what happened 3,000 miles away. Really? Don't even try and say that. And then look at me like I'm the oddball because I don't agree with him based on the facts I lived through and the facts I've looked up. I actually had facts. He has, that's what they say. This is, look at what's happening 3,000 miles away. And what about what happened 30 feet from us? What's happening in our city? Please show me the incident in our city where that justifies having the same viewpoint as that one individual 3,000 miles away. You can't. You just stop speaking because I didn't agree. And I asked for proof. Give me something to say, oh, this is justified. He didn't have any. No justification. Why are we attacking the people who protect us? Why are we attacking our own community without any basis? Because someone said on the internet that somewhere else bad things are happening. Really? That is stupid. Well, ISIS is doing bad things and they tell us that we should do. Well, now I won't even go into that. Well, let's look at it realistically. 99% of this nation has no problem with police officers, quite honestly. 327 million people. Not even 100 cases a year. We're talking about minuscule numbers here. And what we are doing is, while we're talking about literally the handful of bad police officers that do outrageously bad things, and we're focused on that, and that gets tons of media exposure. And there's a difference between exposure in the media and frequency. And people seem to forget that all the time. Just because you see it, this one incident on the news for a week, doesn't mean it's happening every day or that there's hundreds of these. And I'm not saying that it doesn't happen. I'm saying the frequency isn't there. We're not seeing that. And it's not because the media and groups like Citizen Action and Black Lives Matter aren't looking for it. I guarantee you that if there was an incident in my city of Binghamton in Broome County where there was this abuse of power, they're looking for that. They want to have that so that they could plaster it and justify everything that they're trying to tell people. They want to find this. So it's not because there isn't someone looking about it. It's not because it's not being reported. It's because it's not there. Because they're looking for it so that they can justify their viewpoints, so they can justify this fear-mongering that they're giving us. We're supposed to be afraid because of one or two incidents versus, and what are they obfuscating at the same time? The black crime rate. Over 6,000 black on black crimes that resulted in homicides in the United States on an annual basis is the average. And we're talking about, well, we don't want to talk about that because it's it's the police, not the black on black crime, but the police. That's the thing to worry about because there's, 20 police incidents that, get a lot of news attention, or a dozen or 5 in some years, even less. Those, handful of incidents, we want to talk about that versus the 6,000 incidents that are actually harming people, that are far more prevalent every year. I'm sorry, there's a disconnect here for me. And if I, as a person of color, say, you know what, I'm more concerned about black on black crime, I'm more concerned about minority on minority crime and the prevalence of drugs that fuel this and cause this problem. I'm more concerned about the promotion of criminality in our neighborhoods and that you have the option of being an entertainer or a criminal, and that promotion and that dissuading and disgust against education. I think that's the bigger problem. And if I mention that, I'm looking at college professors looking at me and saying, something's wrong with you, Mike, because you should be upset about the handful of police officers hundreds, thousands of miles away. Really? That's what I should be worried about. I'm not supposed to be worried about increasing the number of kids who are minorities and poor and getting them educations and careers to better their lives. That's not the thing to be really worried about. To watch our culture promote the negatives and try and push that, that's not something I should be concerned about. I should be concerned about a handful of police officers. When I have an observation that throughout my lifetime, in my experience of I've been the victim of racism more than a few times in my life. I've been the victim of having bad police officers doing their job poorly several times with guns drawn on me. I understand very clearly in 50 years what that's like. And I can tell you it's improved in my lifetime, that interaction. And I can tell you that what's not improved is our interactions with minorities against other minorities. That hasn't improved. The education of minorities has not improved. I remember back in the 70s, we used to have ads on TV on a regular basis. NAACP, a mind is a terrible thing to waste. It was a huge slogan. We don't see those ads anymore. You don't hear people saying, it's important for you as a minority to have a job, to have a career, to have an occupation. We have, be a rapper, be an entertainer, be on drugs. That's what we're telling them. That's what we're telling our youth. That's what we're telling our communities. And we're telling them at the same time, and be afraid of the police. Why? Why? I don't get past that thought. Why? Why should I, just because I'm a person of color, I should have this innate fear of police officers who aren't doing anything? If I haven't committed a crime, what am I worried about? That they're just going to randomly, and this is the thought. This is what the professor at Binghamton University is instilling in, trying to instill in me, and I have to imagine is being instilled in other students. That this thought is, well, you should have an intrinsic fear of law enforcement because at any point they're going to walk down the street and bum rush you. That they're suddenly going to just shoot you because you exist. Really? Because guess what? That doesn't happen. That really, really does. Yes, there is an incident right now that people are talking about. An incident. In 327 million people, there's an incident. And I'll give you, there's a handful of incidents. Fantastic. In 327 million people, I'd expect that. Statistically, it's supposed to happen. In fact, we have it happen less than what you would statistically expect to see happening. But more importantly, looking at my community, which is not different than 2/3 of the nation in Binghamton, that's not a reality. It's not a reality. I'm not seeing this. And it's not because I'm some kind of super great, powerful person. Again, I don't have a great elected office. I don't live in the best section of town. I'm not friends with every police officer. I don't have influence. I'm not rich. So where is this? And I'm listening to an individual who does have a position of power, who does have greater wealth than me, who does live in a better neighborhood than I do, and they're telling me I should be afraid of a police officer when my experience, without any of those benefits, is not that. I have no reason to fear. It's not like the police aren't in my neighborhood on a regular basis, because there's a lot of crime in this neighborhood. It's not like the police aren't interacting with people in my neighborhood on a regular basis, because they have to. And it's not like people all over this neighborhood are having the police do bad things to them, because they aren't. That is the reality. And I'm getting a Binghamton University professor who is in charge of raising the next generation, and he's out there trying to instill this fear that doesn't exist. That is factually not there. That's the problem we have. We are pushing a message that doesn't exist, and we are promoting this division in people that doesn't benefit anyone. Telling people they should be afraid of the police without just cause does not make the police better, nor does it make anyone safer. It doesn't improve anything for anyone. If anything, it increases the amount of aggression between interactions between minorities and police officers. It doesn't help us. It doesn't move this forward. It doesn't give anything. Because now you have criminals and those who are dealing with police officers being more antagonistic. That retards the situation. It impedes justice. It impedes safety. It makes the situation worse. You're not helping anyone. And I'm watching a Binghamton University professor do this. And I can only imagine how that Binghamton professor is interacting with the students. And the students are coming from across the country, and they have their own illusions based on social media that's saying that the magnitude of attention on isolated events equals frequency, which is not true. And they're applying that mindset to a localized police force that doesn't exist. There is no correlation. I tell you, it upsets me. And I just don't even know how to express this, how much more I can express it. If we really want to see a better interaction between the public and police, the first thing we should probably do is not demonize the police. They're not all great. They're not saints. I don't expect that. But they're not all devils. And they're not all out there saying, hey, you know what? You're a person of color. We're going to come after you. No. They come after, I've seen them go after white criminals and white addicts as much as anyone else when a crime is occurring. And I've seen that throughout the nation. I'm not going to demonize any small group of individuals or any large group of individuals because a handful of others may misuse that. Because if for no other reason, because one day that's going to be used against me. I don't want someone to treat me like a crackhead or a drug dealer just because I'm surrounded by a community that is mostly minority driven that are promoting drug use and criminality. I would be offended by that. So would anyone else. You'd call them a racist. They said, well, since all these other black people are selling drugs and using drugs, you're a drug user and or a drug dealer. If someone said that to you, you would be insulted. Why is the converse saying that about police officers any different? And how does that move anything forward and make people safer by saying police officers are demons and you should be afraid? How does that help make anyone safer? Yes, let's punish those who are doing wrong. Yes, let's make sure we improve things where we can and make things safer for people and make sure that there is an equal playing field whenever we can. But demonizing someone for things they didn't do and guilt by association is just as wrong when you apply it to a police officer as it is when you apply it to a minority. And if I have to say anything else, that's maybe the message I want to get out there. But it disturbed me. It upset me. I don't agree with the Binghamton University professor. I didn't agree in the meeting. I don't agree now. And I'm more than happy to say it publicly. And I'm looking forward to trying to understand how individuals are saying this is all racist when there is no racism present. I really want to hear that. But please, if you disagree, let me know. Tell me your thoughts. Share this. Let's get a discussion going, because that's the only way we get to the root of it all. And with that said, I thank you for joining me in this episode of No Soundbites Allowed. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you share it with other people. And we'll be back very soon with another episode. Thank you.